Now with better
What?
aim chat.
Now with better aim.
Also, get your additional coasters. Get the whole set of coasters, one for each spot at your dinner table.
For only 4 easy
Yeah.
payments of $29 for
4 payments,
15
dude. They're
minutes.
free. You just walk in any store, they gave them to you.
Yeah.
Well, not
You-
minutes,
if you-
you pay,
Listen,
time
if
is
you
money, my
paid for
friend.
no, I'm talking about the coasters. If you paid for
I'm
the
talking about the
coasters,
AOL minutes.
AOL minutes, who paid for that?
Well, time is money, my friend. That's what that
Listen,
came from. They didn't,
no,
people
no,
think
no.
that that's some long-term phrase, but no, it comes from AOL.
You can't.
Real
Real nerds didn't use AOL. We had
Exactly.
dial-up.
We used
didn't
Mindspring.
Yeah.
we had URLs, not keywords.
I
We used
mean,
Mindspring like a boss.
right?
But I did still use their coasters.
Net Zero? Anyone?
I had net zero. I had
phone?
dial-up. As I was my consolation prize. My mother tells me, she goes, as a whatever 12, 13-year-old little boy, she's like, here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna go to your sister's figure skating competitions all the way around the state. And I'm like, how I can count on one hand things I'd rather not do than go to a figure skating competition. She's like, well, here's the deal. If you go with us and do all these things, whatever, and you just sit there and behave yourself and don't screw anything up, I will get you anything you want to make the trip. And that's what I asked for. I was like a net zero. I want my own ISP. Up until that point, it was always I had to go ask my parents to sign me in, which of course only happened once or twice before I was able to use keylogging to capture the password. But they didn't know that at the time. So this is like, well, we'll get you your own account and you can do it. I was like, great. It was net zero.
Man,
$9 a month.
that was your first one, and you
my first one.
boss for that.
And then I took my own hard-earned money and I bought 2 PCMCIA 56K modems and I bonded them together so I could get 128 kbps because we had 2 phone lines at my house.
Heck yeah, shotgun man, shotgun modems. Those are the best.
Yep. Yeah, and they had little pop-out slots in the PCMCA, and I was fortunate because my ThinkPad had 2 slots on each side. Otherwise, they would have doubled up. It's great.
That was
had it all worked
That was
out.
hacking back in the day.
I know.
Yeah.
It felt so cool. Like kids don't understand how hard it is. Like that was all to get on the internet, and then somebody would pick up the phone, we'd start all over again.
And if you wanted to download a picture, just little bits by bits.
Yep. You'd watch the progress bar. You'd go watch a TV show while you waited for it to download, and then open it and see if it was something you even wanted. Dang it!
Imagine being
I
in
remember how excited I was when I got my 14.4 baud modem.
Yeah.
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 Well, that was
from
fast.
24.
Point. Yeah. And then it progressed very quickly from there to get to 56K, 28, and then 56, and then shotgunning them together. Yeah. And then someone would pick up the phone line, like Noah said, I would be playing Ultima Online in this very important raid where we were saving the world from goblins or whatever, and your character gets disconnected. Yeah. It ruins your night because your brother wanted to make a phone call or something else happened.
No, I was like you. We had 2 phone lines because my brother had a BBS. In fact, that's where I first accessed the internet, and that was in the 80s, because we had the account with Aerospace. So before the web, so I was accessing the internet before I had Prodigy, so that was nice.
Yeah, I tell you what, like I really it's funny because as people don't understand when I tell my kids, I'm like, local content, local media, those kinds of things, and they don't understand it because they see the internet as such a prolific thing, right? Like they just assume that it's everywhere. And then we'll get something like we'll be in the car or we'll be out at a campground or we're actually at the Grand Canyon. So embarrassing. We're at the Grand Canyon and I'm like, oh, look at the wonder before you. Like, look at this incredible creation. This is amazing. And my son looks, he's like, they don't have any Wi-Fi here. I'm like, what? Wi-Fi? I'm like, come on. I mean, I guess you are my kid, but still.
Yeah.
Wi-Fi at the Grand Canyon?
Hey, can you patch in the patrons, Noah?
Yes, I would love to patch in the patrons. Are we live?
Yes. And then, Michael, we need to start local recordings now?
In a second, yes.
All right.
Okay, so here's the Earth. Chilling. Damn, that is a sweet Earth, you might say. Round.
The patrons are here.
Round. Hello, patrons.
Oh, maybe they're not. Yeah, they are. No, they're not. Yeah, they are. I see them, but I can't hear them. Hold on. I'll fix you, patrons.
We'll fix you real good.
Sometimes they act up a little bit. Okay, there we go. Hi, patrons.
No?
We have to clap.
Yeah, we're gonna clap. I just want to clap. I don't know if he needs it. I'm just gonna clap anyways, though.
We do need it.
It's usually a good idea.
I just want to clap. I like clapping.
Why is this?
Okay, I don't need like clapping back.
Yeah, there you go. Such a party pooper, Michael.
Wow.
All we wanted to do was clap.
I see. All right.
You ready for us to clap? Can we clap now?
Yeah.
Are we there yet? Can we clap now?
Oh.
There yet? Can we clap now?
Okay, Jack. Front mic. Okay.
You can't tell me when to clap. Clap whenever I want. What's up?
No, I do tell you that's how this whole thing
Now
works.
I have shown
That's
you
how this whole thing
by
works.
clapping whenever I want.
He's got the power.
Yeah.
Now I'm recording. Okay, there we go. My Jack sync got out of sync.
As soon as
Audacity sometimes has issues with Jack sync.
I go to do that, and Jitsi tells me your microphone appears to be noisy.
Yeah.
Perhaps that's because I'm acting like a clown in front of the microphone. Just to guess here.
Okay, there we go.
Tegan, how are you?
Hello, hi.
All right, we're gonna be, and everybody need to be muted.
All right. Mute patrons for a second.
They're
And
gone.
You ready for us to
They're not
clap?
finished
Can we
yet.
clap? Can we clap?
We can clap. Yes, we are.
Here we go.
Yes.
Initiate clap sequence. 5, 4. I suppose you should count.
Yeah, you
Oh.
count. You're
3.
really good at counting.
Okay.
In
3,
the right order.
3, 2, 1.
Happened? Why are you laughing at us? I thought I did a good manly clap. I don't understand.
You remember last week when you hit your microphone?
Yeah.
I hit my microphone.
You get it back.
My
All right.
goodness. Oh my goodness.
All right. Do that awesome counting thing you can do again.
Yeah. Okay. 3, 2, 1.
And you are really good at counting. Anybody ever told you that?
He even does it backwards.
Yeah.
Wish I could do that.
1, 2, 3, and 3, 2, 1.
God, quit showing off. Now you're just being arrogant. Jeez.
Ridiculous.
You know, you give someone a compliment
Uh.
and their head gets all big and they act like that. You know.
Hi, everyone on YouTube. Hi, Angus. Hi, Jan.
Ryan's a big boy now. He can clap when he wants to. I can clap when I want to. I can.
Hello, the fluffy programmer. Saboon, we have in there. Wendy.
All right.
Yay. Joe is in there. Ruben.
We are ready to go.
All right. Jill, quit being nice to people. We're ready to go.
That's not what I meant. Okay.
And act.
Welcome to episode 200, and I almost said 100 again, so I'm just going to start over because it was so weird, awkward.
Welcome to episode. What's those numbers? It's
I
so
do
big.
too many things
Anything
where I
over
taste
50
Right
just
after we
exciting.
gave
blows my mind.
I just did an
Jeez.
episode 166 yesterday. Give me a break, people.
Yeah.
All right.
That's a competing network, so you really shouldn't
It
be
is
mentioning that.
not at all a competing network.
This Week in Linux is a competing network.
On the same network.
Oh,
and it's
okay,
just a
continue.
different show.
All right.
All right. Welcome to episode 242 of Destination Linux. Whether you're brand new to open source or a guru of sudo, this is the podcast for you. My name is Michael, and with me today are Jill, Ryan, and Noah. And on this week's episode of Destination Linux, we're going to discuss open source licensing and help everyone navigate this critical part of the open source ecosystem. Then we're going to discuss some disturbing surveillance laws that are currently impacting our friends in Australia. Plus, we have our tips, tricks, and software picks. All this and much more coming up right now on Destination Linux. So I don't know what's going on, but
Jill, you've got to stop being nice, okay? We've covered this how many times? You don't compliment Michael. You can compliment Noah. You can't compliment Michael. Gosh, please.
So we don't. Michael's counting skills leave something to be desired.
Yeah.
3, 2.
No, it was
4 times the
perfect.
charm.
Don't be lying right now. Don't lie to yourself.
All right, you ready for Noah to go?
That didn't sound like a yes.
No, it was very
I don't like
indecisive. I don't like indecisive people.
Oh, right.
Say no.
All right, we are ready. Nice.
There we
Nice.
go. Yay,
We
Noah.
have wait music now. Perfect. Is that the same music from the MegaFest?
Yes.
All right. We are ready. Go 2 seconds.
Chris writes in to say hello to the DLOGs of IT. I'm writing from the other side of the world in Japan. I've been a regular listener for a couple of years, but it's definitely enjoy all of the DL shows. I wanted to inquire to your thoughts on the topic of careers in Linux and cloud administration. I know this is something that you've covered at least 1 or 2 programs in the past, DL or DLN Extend. I'm specifically considering a rather late career change, transitioning from mostly network and telecom into project management over to Linux and Cloud Services Administration, aka SRE. Having some trepidation about 50 plus making such a leap, but I need a change if for nothing more than my own sanity. Part of this transition includes a consideration of getting trained up in the area, for which I'm considering a couple of platforms, including a Cloud Guru, a CBT Nugget. I've used CBT Nuggets in the past and found their instructors to be dynamic and engaging, and their material to be decent in terms of the content and hands-on. I also like CBT Nuggets from the perspective of diversity. They have courses across a wide spectrum of topics. A Cloud Guru seems to be what became of the organization known in the past as Pluralsight. Having taken Pluralsight classes in the past and didn't walk away from them feeling as if the material was sufficient to meet my needs, I'd really love to hear your opinions on the topics of careers in Linux and cloud technologies, as well as training opportunities to transition to said career. You guys and gals are awesome. Thanks so much for your contributions to the community, Chris. And so, Chris, we actually have a special answer from you from one of our other shows, The Pseudo Show, featuring Brandon and Eric. Here's Brandon.
Chris, thank you for the email. I really do appreciate it. So right off the bat, you might want to consider staying in the telco space. Many telco providers are making a hard pivot to cloud technologies for running their network. And the heart of that is Linux and cloud technologies like Kubernetes, OpenStack, and of course, the public cloud providers. Whichever way you choose to go, whether that's staying in telecom or moving to general enterprise cloud, the advice is the same. SRE style roles require good understanding of programming. I highly recommend learning Python. Python is the language of automation and at the core of many of the tools you will use as an SRE, like Ansible. Linux and Kubernetes are very important to learn as well. The CNCF and the Linux Foundation have great training and industry-recognized certifications. You may also want to get training and certifications on one or more public cloud providers, whether that's AWS, Azure, GCP, or IBM. But since you're in Asia, you may also want to consider Alibaba Cloud. Thanks for the email, Chris. I hope this helps.
And we're back.
So what I loved about Brandon's answer to this question specifically is he was telling them in the network world, in the telecom world that the listener is a part of, that you don't really have to switch entire industries there, because Brandon goes into the fact that in telecom world, actually these cloud services are used quite aggressively. So you could definitely make an easy career transition into another department. And of course, Brandon gives him lots of options there or some training that he can take to get that going. But instead of changing entire industries, you could take some of the experience and knowledge that you have, the project management skills, which by the way are useful no matter what job you have. I don't care if you're going to be a manager, a director, you're going to be an engineer. Project management is a universally helpful skill to have, and stay in your same industry, but move over into the cloud world of that, because behind all of the telecom technologies, there's a lot of cloud and there's a lot of Linux in there.
Good place to stop. So.
Oh, was Noah gonna say something else?
I don't know.
Okay. I mean,
okay. I was waiting.
Are you gonna say something though, Michael?
No, I think I think the way you followed up on Brandon's was a good ending.
All right,
okay, great. Okay. So awesome. Thank you, Chris, for the feedback. And we absolutely love hearing from our worldwide community. What we want you to do is get your official DLN mug, fill it with some coffee or bubbly, sit down on the nearest stool and send us an email to comments@destinationlinux.org. And want to join in on the community discussions? Then join the DLN community forums by going to dlnforum.com.
This episode of Destination Linux, it's brought to you by DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean recently announced their new managed MongoDB services, which is a fully managed database as a service known as DBaaS. With DBaaS, you can focus more on building scalable, high-performance apps and less on maintaining the database. You simply offload the MongoDB administration to DigitalOcean. You let them do all of the heavy lifting, all the provisioning, all the managing, all the scaling, the updates, the backups, the security, all the things that you don't want to do unless you're a database admin, in which case you're probably not using the database as a service, in which case you're probably using one of DigitalOcean's pre-built droplets that you can spin up in any database of your choice. But if that's not you, then you don't want to deal with all of that stuff, and then you are back to DBaaS. DigitalOcean built this service in partnership with MongoDB, and what that means is together they've ensured that you'll get access to all of the latest releases of MongoDB document database as well as soon as they become available. Now, as a listener of the Destination Linux podcast and a member of the DLN community, you can get started for free. Actually, it's even better than for free because DigitalOcean is going to give you a $100 credit when you go to do.co/DLN-Mongo. If you go to do.co/DLN-Mongo, they're going to give you that $100 free credit, and that will allow you to get started on DigitalOcean. You can try all of their service without spending a dime out of your own pocket. Why do they do that? Because they know after they give you $100 and you just try it for a few months, you'll be hooked for life, like I am. So get addicted to DigitalOcean by going to do.co/DLN-Mongo. And of course, a huge thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring this episode of Destination Linux.
Before we kick off, Noah, everyone in the Patron room saying I'm muted. They can't hear me in Jitsi. I don't know why mine would be specifically targeted.
Nope. That's not true.
Okay.
They can hear one of you. They can hear all of you.
Right.
To hydrate.
Yeah,
Aww.
That's why I have a giant bottle this time.
Michael, they liked your animations. I guess it worked, huh?
It did.
Well, they're saying they can hear no one, actually. Destination Linux is muted in Jitsi.
Oh, is it?
I have a pop-up on I had a pop-up on my screen that said you've been muted by Conan. Did Conan mute me maybe?
Conan? You in trouble?
Can you hear us now?
You in trouble?
Hello? Hello? Is anybody there? Can you guys hear us?
We're here.
Okay,
Yep.
good. All right.
We're here.
Okay. You can hear us again.
Thanks a lot, Conan. Jeez.
I accidentally muted you guys when I was trying to mute everyone else.
Oh, it's okay. We'll let it go this time.
Don't
let it happen again.
Punishment
Just
is
kidding.
we'll come up with another package for you to fix.
Punishment is we give them a hug.
Yeah, we'll just say,
Oh,
hey,
no,
can
we
you
love
fix this? All right.
All right. Back to the
Gonna
show.
Get Yast working for Arch.
Wow.
That's a pretty good punishment, actually. I like it. All right, Michael, can you go? Enough of this performance stretching and all this stuff. You're not Michael Jordan. Just read, okay? Just go.
Channel the licensing.
There we go.
Channel it, Michael.
Yes.
Feel the licensing within
I
you.
got it. It's the aura is expanding for the
The aura of licensing is expanding.
All right. Let's go.
Almost reach BSD level proportions.
No, that's way easy.
There is no license there.
There is. Might as well not be. Anyway,
Yeah.
And act.
We recently celebrated 30 years of Linux with the first ever DLN MegaFest. So this week of DL, we thought, what could be better to celebrate that kind of milestone than talking about software licenses? I know everyone is just on the edge of their seat right now, but seriously,
I think licenses. Oh, okay.
Right, but
riveting content.
This is something that needs to be talked about because licenses are the framework that makes it possible for the open source ecosystem to even exist. So it's important that we start out by clarifying, there's many different types of open source licenses and many versions of each license, really. But the discussion is not meant to be like a battle of the licenses. We'll give our opinions, of course, but it's not going to be like a good versus bad discussion. Now, there are several dozen licenses, so we're not going to be covering all of them. We're going to be focusing on the ones that you're going to come across most often online, versus whether you're looking at GitHub packages or GitLab packages and that sort of stuff. And at the core of an open source license, it's basically a legal agreement between the creator of the software and the user or the community. And generally, in the Linux community, we're focused on the licenses that allow for the software to be freely used, modified, and shared. So that sort of thing.
Imagine a world where we didn't have to deal with proprietary licenses. What is it that we talk about when you think about a proprietary license coming up? See, Michael, I could see you dreaming there and you looking up in the sky with a smile on your face. Right. And I don't think that was forced, because that would be a beautiful world. Because half the time when we're using this software, whether it's an app you're downloading on your phone, whether it's a website that you're going through, and you see this EULA, how many people actually stop and read it? Before joining open source, understanding Linux, getting into this privacy and security world, I didn't read them. I was just like, yeah, accept, next. And all of us were doing that across the globe. We were just accepting whatever terms they were coming up with. And when I think about this more deeply, I kind of think about how the fact that these licenses that we agree to at this time, if you're a corporation and you put out a license for your Photoshop, for your Windows or whatnot, and then I decide as an organization, I'm adopting that product and I agree to those terms as they are now. What's interesting about these license agreements is they change. They can change them at any time they want. They send you those emails all the time, right? Talking about, oh, we've updated our EULA. And now this thing that I've incorporated into my business, that's now a major part of my business being able to operate, has a license that initially, maybe I even agreed to its terms, but now has these terms that are horrifically privacy invasive or something else. And it's very hard to escape from. So when you think about the importance of an open source license, in the fact that this type of thing, there are many controls and things that happen in open source license. This type of thing you don't have to worry about. It is a nirvana to think about a world in which we don't have to deal with this type of thing as aggressively as we do with the proprietary software.
I'll take the other side of that, Ryan, and I would tell you that I think we owe a proprietary license a great debt of gratitude, and here's why. It is only when you can compare the extremes that you begin to appreciate what you really have, right? And I'll give you an example of that. I worked at a medical facility for a while, and they had a piece of imaging software that was, I think it was like $10,000, $15,000 per licensed copy. And they had 50 different machines that they had to run. So needless to say, they had a lot of money tied up in this software. And they only got to use it for like 6-7 years. And then the company got bought out by a different company. And what originally was the agreement was, oh, we'll activate versions forever. There's really no time that it ever expires. Turned into, oh no, you have to go on to our paid subscription service or the software is just going to stop working. We won't activate it anymore. And lo and behold, they all of a sudden have hundreds of thousands of dollars that are just tied up with nothing, right? And they have blue sky and nothing in their hands to show for it. And going through that experience is one of the things that helps me understand not only how grateful I am to have the piece of software, but how grateful I am that developer chooses to license it in a freedom respecting way. And I think in absence of having those proprietary licenses in our lives or having to deal with those headaches or those problems, I think we would become so accustomed to freedom that we would start to slip into I should just have it because in that sense of entitlement. So I think a healthy balance.
There's no evil. How do you know there's good?
Right. Exactly.
What defines good type of argument? That's argument.
It's a funny approach because when you started talking about it, I didn't expect your reason to.
Like, where's he going with this?
Like proprietary is good because you understand the pain of proprietary from it.
But really, though, I mean, really, you have that experience, right? I challenge you to go buy a piece of hardware or go buy a piece of software and then have a company just arbitrarily tell you that you can't use the thing that you paid for anymore, and then come back and tell me that it's just a tool, just a license. Doesn't really matter. It's just a tool.
It's
Don't get emotionally attached to a tool.
It's a valuable lesson that a lot of people learn the hard way, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. So it is, I guess, in a way beneficial, but ultimately still awful. And I think that even if we, had an open source feature, because it still has like some of the licenses have obligations attached and stuff like that. So there is still some of that. So
I mean, just imagine getting, though, for a second, a mortgage, and you sign these terms to say, hey, I'm going to do a 30-year fixed rate on this mortgage. And then the mortgage company has a right and even the expectation that they're going to change it anytime they want. The percent APR, they're going to change the terms of how long it takes to pay back. They could do whatever. We would never be able to stand for that, right? We would be furious. I mean, these balloon loans and things like that were kind of an attempt in the mortgage world to do something like that. But the idea is archaic of what that could do. You would have no ability to know 30 years from now what you're going to be able to pay and plan for that. And the same thing goes with software. When I think about businesses adopting software with these proprietary licenses, and after the Copyright Act of 1976, prior to that, everybody was sharing source code. It was like this cool hacker thing, like, hey, I figured this thing out. You can use it over here. And everybody was doing like we do in Linux once that Copyright Act happened. But think about today with the EULA, these things change constantly. You can, in fact, when you're looking at like privacy for a piece of hardware or a watch or something like that, you'll see these articles that like, oh yeah, this particular brand is your most private, and this is why, and they'll have a snapshot of the privacy policy. Then I would go and I'd look at the hardware site today and see a completely different privacy policy that was completely far more invasive than the one that they were saying it was better against a year ago. So the fact that these can turn at a dime really, to me, makes a proprietary license a very scary option for businesses, and it's probably why you're seeing open source being adopted at such a heavy rate right now in businesses, because it's actually more reliable. The terms are more predictable.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, especially with the whole EULA things changing and the terms of service changing. And also sometimes they have clauses in those terms where if you agree to it once and they decide to change it, they have to just send you an email. But if you don't respond, you're automatically agreeing to the next change too. So like that's annoying stuff.
Well, it's also because of that reason that open source gets to progress. The proprietary license, you have all these complaints. We have all these complaints about them, but in reality, that helps make our open source licenses even better. And it's actually really good to have a hybrid in between. Like on Linux, you can run proprietary software. If we didn't have that ability, a lot of companies, wouldn't make money on Linux. It's unfortunate, but true.
Yeah.
I guess I would add on one of the things before we get into the specific types of license. The other thing is, it's one thing just to say, hey, the terms change all the time, and so your expectations have to shift with them. But fundamentally, being locked out of your front door. Just imagine if the key on the mortgage was held by the mortgage broker, and they decide if and when you can get into your house. And so as long as they agree to keep coming over and unlocking the front door for you, you're able to get into your house. But it constantly is on the back of your mind that someday they may just decide to not come over with that key, and there's nothing you can do about it.
I like that example. You could take it further and say, because you can't get in there and actually see the code that goes on in the proprietary world. Imagine that mortgage broker who holds the key also saying, by the way, you can't make changes to the paint or color or anything inside here, because that's all proprietary. Scary. And that keeps the value of the house up, leaving it the color it is. So don't change anything.
So now think about that. Would you call that your house?
No.
No, it's not your house. It's you're renting a house. You're borrowing it from a friend. And open source, freedom in open source, and the licenses that we're about to discuss allow the user to really own that code themselves, even if they weren't the original creator. And I think that's fantastic.
Absolutely. And let's talk about those licenses. So there's a lot, and we already talked about, we're not going to be going into every single one of them, but we're going to talk about 5 of the most common ones. And that is the GNU GPL, the Apache license, the BSD license, MIT and the MPL, which is the Mozilla public license. There's also a thing called source available, but that has nothing to do with licensing. That's someone trying to pretend that they're open source, but they're not really. And we're not going to count that, but that is a thing that you might see at some point. But let's start with the GPL. This is a copyleft license, and this means that if you use code that is under the GPL, then your code must also be released under the GPL. The purpose of this approach is to ensure a reciprocal system of like through the ecosystem. So if you take someone's code, then you have to provide your changes to that code because you are required to be releasing it under that same license. And there are several versions of the GPL. There's the GPL v2 and the v3 that are both still being used. And the Linux kernel, for example, is using the GPL v2 with some modifications of like add-ons and stuff. But there's also many other licenses that we already talked about. Let's talk about next the MIT license. And it's actually the most permissive license of the five. There's no strings attached. You can basically do whatever you want with the code with this license. And it's easy to understand as long as you add a copy of the original MIT license and copyright notice that you're free to do whatever. So according to the one study, actually shows that MIT license is used by like 27% of the 4 million open source packages that they studied. And that is a significant amount, obviously. So there's pros and cons between, permissive and less permissive and that sort of stuff. We'll get to that a little later. But next, let's talk about BSD. BSD license has multiple versions, as some are known as the 4 clause, the 3 clause, and the 2 clause version of the license. It has minimal restrictions on the use of the distribution. It's similar to MIT, but not as it's not do whatever. But this is different than the GNU GPL copyleft license, which has the share alike requirements. Since these versions are vastly different, we're only going to focus on the latest BSD license, which has these types of stipulations. First of all, it says you have to retain the copyright notice, list of conditions, and disclaimer on all redistributions of source code and on all documentation and any other material accompanying the distribution. You cannot use the name of the organization or contributors in the copyright notice to endorse or promote products without written permission. And also, Linus had something to say about this particular license in 2016 at the LinuxCon, which was over the years, I've become convinced that the BSD license is great for code you don't care about. I'll use it myself. So this is an interesting approach. And there's also some other licenses. And the Apache license is also considered a permissive license in that it allows users to use the software for any purpose, to distribute it, to modify it, and to distribute modified versions of the software under the terms of the license. The terms are namely requirements to be including copyright, including the license, state what changes you made, and also include a notice of the changes. And then the final one of the 5 is the MPL. And MPL is a very interesting license because it's also considered a weak copyleft license in some people's descriptions. That's not necessarily to say that it's a poor license, but that's just the description of how it compares to the GPL, for example.
Now hold on for a second, Michael, because MPL could be Microsoft's license or it could be Mozilla's license.
It's
so which
Mozilla's.
one? Because some people may not realize that Microsoft actually has an open source license as well.
They do have a license. We're not talking about that one because it's not worth using.
Darn.
But there's the Mozilla public license, or the MPL. That's the one we're talking about in this particular case. For those who don't know, Mozilla is the people who make Firefox and many other things. Anyway, so this particular license seeks to bring balance to the option of having to be copyleft, but also having it more permissive. So it's bringing balance to the force, so to speak. So it allows you to have less strict copyleft requirements, but not as permissive as the MIT license. The goal is to strike a balance between the companies who love their proprietary software, but want to take open source for a spin as well. This basically means the person using MPL code must make the source code for any changes available, so it is copyleft, but they can combine MPL software with proprietary code, unlike the GPL, and as long as they keep the MPL code in separate files. So that's what's really interesting about that particular piece, is that the GPL, you're not allowed to mix the different licenses, whereas the MPL does allow you to do it.
So before we move on, Michael, I got to ask you, I ran across Linus saying that he hated the GPL v3, like in a conference. And he was not only disliked the license, but that he felt it was at that time, and we know how he can be with some of his comments and things. He's very flamboyant in his conversation. But he basically was saying that the FSF was trying to pull a quick one on people with V3. What is the issue with GPL V2 versus V3 in your mind?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of differences. So I guess it depends on, because like there's the GPL V3 also talks about patents, whereas the V2 did not. And it gives rights to using different types of patents. But the main thing is that it's a two-factor situation where the GPL3 has to be good enough to justify going through the process of relicensing a giant project, and it didn't provide the necessary benefits for it. Plus, it also added extra features that didn't really apply to the kernel. So the reason why the V2 is still used is because two reasons. There wasn't that much benefit, but also the biggest reason is that you'd have to get every single person who signed to use the license, to use that particular license in that project, to agree to change it. Otherwise, you can't go forward. So unless you have some kind of contributor agreement, like some people have added in their projects, you actually have to have people agree to go through that whole process of making those changes. And they did do an add-on stuff to, there are some things in the GPL v3 that they did want. So they did kind of do like a add-on patch, so to speak, on the v2 version. But the main reason why that Linus hated it is because that the GPL mandates that it must be possible for you to use the code you released. And it basically is like, I'm not sure if the TiVo situation happened.
Yes, he kept talking about that in the conference, the TiVo, something with TiVocation.
Yeah,
and I had to look it up and realize TiVoization, that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, this is basically what there was a loophole in the V2 that allowed TiVo to kind of sit in a gray area of using GPL code without releasing software itself. So there's a lot of changes to the license for that specific thing, and Linus didn't like that. Mostly didn't like that particular thing. But there's also the other factors I mentioned.
Very interesting. So when we talk about the fact that he hated the V3, is anyone aware that because he changes his mind from time to time, is ever going to adopt a different license, or do you think it will stay on V2? Because I also learned during that conference that Linux was not initially released under the GPL license. It actually had its own license that he created, which he also called very stupid. He hated his own license, but it was originally not released under the GPL license, and I did not know that.
Right. It was originally like partly proprietary and partly not. And then he was convinced to use the GPL. And the reason was like that basically he wanted to do the free software open source ecosystem type of thing. And he realized that if he tried to make it proprietary, it's going to limit the amount of people who would even be interested. And that's the case for many ways in the past, where if you look back in that era, like the late 70s, like the 80s and the early 90s, there were so many different types of annoyances with licensing of the proprietary systems, like, the Unix system that, the Linux history goes back to the Unix history. And there was such a massive battle between licenses and proprietary aspects and what you get to use in the Unix that it was so disappointing that we could have had what we do now years ago if the Unix team didn't battle for a decade. So there was like multiple different Unixes. There were different versions of Unix by the same company. Like Microsoft had their own Unix called Xenix. It was it was such a mess that the licenses is, the open source license that he chose to go with is because of the historic experience with the whole Unix.
His original license was like zero commercialization, right? That's what he was going for. Right. Imagine how that would have impacted the growth and future of Linux had he stuck with that. He was smart enough to realize that his own license that he was putting out there was not going to help the growth of this project.
Yeah. it was proprietary in the sense that you couldn't do commercial, but it was open source in every other way, which is kind of interesting because like that having commercial is kind of fundamental to the growth of open source anyway. So it was really definitely something that was good that he changed it, of course. So let's talk about the licenses and that sort of thing. Let me ask the host, if you have some new software that you're going to make and it's going to revolutionize the world,
Michael AI bot.
Of course, for sure. Which licenses are you going to pick and why? So let's start off with Jill.
Yeah, so I would,
that one is. We should get rid of that
I'm
one.
pretty sure it's GPL.
It's clearly
GPL
doesn't
version
work well.
2. Nice.
Okay.
Clearly
So
doesn't work.
You're back. Good. At least I fixed that part.
Yay.
Question for you guys: Would you want to get into Creative Commons stuff at all?
Why not?
We can if you want to, but
Yeah,
I do want to go ahead and say, everybody, stop your recording. We're going to start recording again.
Okay.
You want me to save what I recorded though, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Save a WAV file.
Okay.
Save a WAV.
Wow.
Export.
Export as WAV.
Wave.
You wanted me to use FLAC, but now you want me to use Wave. Got it.
That's because if you want to know, that's because there's a Kdenlive issue with FLAC right now.
242.
So make sure to WAV it. Okay, exporting WAV. Stand by. Completion in 7, 6,
1,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. WAV has been saved.
So I want WAV PCM linear, WAV IEEE float, WAV MP3, WAV MS80
You can also say export as a WAV and then just take the default.
Okay.
Signed 16-bit file.
Translation. I don't know what any of those things are. Just stick with the default. That seems to work.
So the reason is because you can have higher quality, but we don't need that sort of stuff because 16-bit PCM is ridiculously high quality already. And we're not going to be going into the independent waves and.
So you want linear PCM because that's the default there.
Yes, PCM 16.
All right.
Okay. Now I'm gonna close it.
I'll save it as part 1.
Cool.
Yeah, that's what I did.
I saved mine as A. The next one will be B. That way, if we have a third failure, we'll have part C. I'm going to name it Type C.
Of course you will.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, let me know when you're ready to start. Don't start yet, but let me know when you're
ready to start. Have not started, but ready to start. Ryan's not ready, but I'm ready.
I'm not ready.
I'm ready. Ryan's not ready.
Not ready.
Ryan's not ready, but I'm ready.
Not ready.
Ryan's not ready. He could be ready, but he's not.
JGJ.
I'm ready.
In chat. Hi, Merkin. 3K.
Is everybody ready?
Terminal for life.
Now I'm ready.
Now Ryan is ready.
Okay.
Ryan's
also,
ready.
I'm ready. Jill, are you ready?
Yes.
Jill's also
I'm
ready.
recording.
Michael?
Okay, everybody.
All of us are ready.
I want you to kill that one and start recording at the same time.
Okay, ready?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, stop.
All right.
File.
We're not recording.
I'll swing.
We're just waiting.
I didn't listen to instructions.
Oh, he's gonna show us the famous countdown.
This is a whole new thing. So we're going to just start the recording now and then do the clap. So start recording.
Started the recording.
I just don't want to have to kind of find where the stuff is in the giant file and whatnot.
Got it.
Yeah.
It'll be where the claps are.
Yes.
I'm talking about that's why we stopped the recording, so I didn't have to put the two together and stuff.
Yeah.
All right, that's not helpful. It's not helpful. Remember, you can mess with me after I have the
We're trying to mark.
Okay.
We're
Okay.
trying-
after.
All right, let's sync. Then we can mess with you.
Yes.
All right, 3, 2, 1.
That was a great that was a great countdown again, Mike.
Can we mess with you now?
Really nailed it.
Yes, you can mess with me. Yeah, sure.
Yes. No, I don't have anything to say though.
All right, so on the edit, we're just gonna. How about we just start? You can just start from the top, Jill.
Okay.
Start from the top. Taking us all the way to the bottom.
Started from the bottom. Now we're here. All right. Go 2 seconds.
So from a marketing standpoint, I would definitely choose the GNU Public License version 2 or the GPL v2 that we have been talking about, like Linus Torvalds did with Linux back in 1992. And the main reason is that there are so many companies involved with the GPL version 2 license, and that has led to the huge growth and adoption of open source in Linux. And the beauty of the GNU GPL is that you have the freedom to run it with no restrictions. You can copy it for a friend, study, improve, and tinker with it, and then distribute those changes to the world. And also, one of the very important rules of the GPL is that the GPL insists that the same rights that you received under the GPL be passed on to those you distribute your work to. Awesome. So this ensures continued openness through all generations of my open source software. And I would be honored if someone, honestly, if they would fork it, tinker with it, and use it to fit their needs and make it even better.
Very nice.
So that's my problem with the BSD license, right? Is it seems like it's a race to the bottom. Like it'll be, what is the rationale? Like what is the justification for, okay, I have this really cool thing. Oh, we're finally making some traction. Hey, everyone's using my cool thing. Hey, look over there. Those open source guys are getting ahead. That's mine now.
Mhm.
Okay, now we're done. And now proprietary moves on ahead and open source starts all over again, right? It seems to me that if we're going to be productive with it, we have to have some sort of teeth behind it to say, hey, all the work that we do matters too.
Yeah, it's interesting because Linus saying it's great for code you don't care about. So I think that's a perfect way of describing the BSD license. Not saying there's not a point to its existence, but I think that's a perfect explanation for it.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of companies choose using it because it's the easy license, like Sony does with the PlayStation and Apple does with Mac OS. And so
Well, I mean,
that's why a lot of companies.
the whole problem I have with the permissive licenses like the BSD or the MIT is that they are too permissive, allowing them to do whatever they want. Like Noah said, like a company can take code that is open source, make it proprietary, and then not give back because those licenses allow that because they're so permissive. That's my preference. It's just my opinion. Whether you agree with it or not, I understand. But this is more of a if I'm going to make code that I want people to use and benefit from, I would like to be able to benefit from the code that someone else makes on top of mine, because I wouldn't want to basically like, create a platform or a foundation for something and then that becomes something awesome and then I get no benefit from it whatsoever. Like even if it's just the code bag, it doesn't like if someone takes software, and this is not about commercialism or anything. If someone wants to take a GPL code and then make a service based around it and make money from it, that's fantastic. And there's nothing wrong with that because you're not hurting you're not trying to rebrand it or make a whole new thing and say this is the better version, even though it really comes from this other core project. This is something that you really can't do with a GPL in terms of license compliance, but with the BSD MIT, you totally can. So in my opinion, if I was going to make some software and for this purpose, I'll answer my own, pitch kind of thing. It depends on the purpose of the software. Like if it's something that doesn't really have any intent for future, like long-term value to me, I wouldn't really have a preference. And I'd probably pick either GPL or MPL. Like I would still pick the GPL or something that's copyleft compliant because I want it to be, possible for everyone to benefit, not just the, a company who sees it and takes advantage of it. Like you mentioned, Jill mentioned Apple. For a lot of people don't know that there's a lot of BSD related stuff inside of the OS 10, and they were able to do that because the license allowed them to do that, whatever they wanted. And the GPL and MPL are the things that I would consider, and maybe even dual license the project with both of them, because there are some times where if you want to get some software into like an app store of sorts, you couldn't do it because the GPL is not like compatible with their terms of service or whatever, and the MPL would allow you to have that functionality. So you could kind of do both, and since the MPL is compatible with GPL, it's it is possible to do a combination that way.
Of course, Michael chooses the Microsoft license.
It's Mozilla.
No, he likes the
Mozilla.
I'm a Firefox fanboy, and that's why it makes sense that I choose the MPL. But there are some pros and cons to both of them anyway.
Shouldn't we always be asking the question as to why is it that it's not compatible with the GPL? What parts are incompatible, and what part of that might be unacceptable to us?
Well, in terms of the GPL, typically something to be incompatible with the GPL is because it doesn't like the whole you have to release the code underneath this license too. Like that's the main thing that makes something incompatible, because a lot of people don't want to release it under that. So they either have to have it in a like a not a direct integration, or and even if they have a dependency library, they can't really use it either. But if they have like an abstraction layer and stuff like that, they can kind of skirt by it, sort of. But with other licenses, they don't have to deal with that kind of headache. And the MPL is compatible with the GPL because it requires you to keep the source open and relicense it under the MPL as well. But it also allows it to be used in conjunction with proprietary software, whereas the GPL does not. So that's why it's both compatible with the GPL and proprietary in a way. And that's not to say that it's the best license just outright, but it is a license that is worth considering because you still get a lot of the benefits from the GPL, but you don't have the fear from some companies who might see that and go, oh, no, I don't want to do that because it doesn't allow me to do whatever I want with your stuff.
Oh, does he have flexible Michael AI?
Well, I was going to say, Jill, when I was writing the software, Michael AI, which I knew was going to change the world. And I imagined Apple was going to adopt it. It would be your new personal assistant there. Android was going to adopt it to be your new personal assistant there. The whole world was going to change at this. I decided to do an MIT license because I'm selfless, and that's actually what Neil chose for me, which I really appreciate, Neil, out there. So it's free for anybody. No strings attached. Go change.
Okay, we're going to have to edit this because he chose MPL.
Oh, darn. So, Neil, thanks for choosing MPL. That now I can make money off of this, and there are strings attached.
There are no strings attached. You can use it however you want.
After giving Michael a hard time for the entire episode of using the Microsoft public license, then he chooses that for the Michael AI.
Well, I figured if you're going to use Michael AI, you need a Microsoft license.
Okay, again, to be clear, everyone, it's the Mozilla public license. It is not Microsoft.
It's going to be known as the Michael AI public license from now on.
Yes.
The Michael public license.
Yes,
this is great.
I love it. I'm using MPL for everything. Then.
I'm using MPL for everything too.
Yes, it's settled. How much do you love us, Michael?
It's fantastic. Bunches and bunches. I can't express the amount of joy that I get from these conversations. All right. I guess we can end it there.
Actually, don't cut out the part where I call it that whole sequence. You need to keep that in the show, man.
What?
I don't know why you said you're going to cut that out. I think that's even funnier, right?
Yeah.
And I thought it was MIT, but it's really MPL. That's brilliant.
I'm pretty sure it's MPL, like almost 100%.
Here's the thing: it doesn't really matter because he says right in there, "I don't know." Neil chose it for me.
Exactly.
It sounds like sounds like he's a licensing expert.
Right. He knows what he's doing. I'll let him choose it.
But Michael, my Michael AI bot on my one laptop per child is GPL.
You can technically make it possible because it does have compatibility. So
yes.
I like how the Michael AI bot is licensed so that you can put it with proprietary stuff.
Well, it was the only way that Apple would allow him to integrate it with Siri.
Exactly. That's what he wanted.
All right, let me see.
He wanted to make Cortana better.
Let me see what license Neil actually did here. It is MPL. You're right. It was
couldn't
MPL.
get any worse. So
yeah.
Good.
Cortana.
You could see that's a patch in from Neil, like because I didn't have a license on it before. It was so free, there was no license.
Yeah. Well, that's the opposite. When something doesn't have a license, it's technically just completely proprietary, copyrighted. But yeah, we should mention that because you don't have a license. That's important because if you don't have a license for your code,
why don't you say, "Hey Ryan, even though you didn't know which license Neil chose for you, just as a start from there."
Sure, why not?
That's great.
3, 2, 1, go.
It's actually good we talk about the fact that you didn't know what the license was, but that's okay because it is important to know that if you don't have a license on your project, you are not open. You like a lot of people think they just put the code out there and they're done, but people will just avoid the code completely if they don't have a license attached because they don't know what they can expect from the code. So, for example, you mentioned how Neil submitted a patch to fix the licensing thing. It's because if you have no license at all, it's effectively proprietary and copyrighted, and that way people wouldn't want to use it. I've seen a lot of projects that I was very tempted to try, but then I saw no license. Like, well, now I'm not going to use this because there's no chance, there's no way for me to know that they're not going to all of a sudden decide to make it, outright proprietary in the future. So that's a very good point to at least put in the show in there because, if you don't have a license, think about one of the 5 we talked about in this show.
Think about not changing the world, Ryan.
Yeah, think about it.
Right. And also, I mean, you can choose which one you want, but just to be clear, I think the most helpful to the open source system is the GPL or MPL. That's just my opinion.
Microsoft.
Mozilla.
If you don't leave that in, I hate you.
That's in. That's in for sure. That's in for sure. Not because you don't have it. That's just good. That's just good entertainment right there.
All right.
All right. Just 1 second so I can prep for this next thingy. Boom. All right. You got to mute when you clear your throat.
Only when we're recording.
We're recording at all times.
Wow. I mean, when we're doing
technically speaking.
I'm just saying.
Fair enough. All right.
During a segment.
So segment starting now. This episode of Destination Linux is brought to you by Bitwarden. You can get started right now with your free account at bitwarden.com/DLN. Bitwarden is an awesome piece of software. It is a password manager that allows you to have peace of mind knowing that your online accounts are secure. And Bitwarden does this by creating multiple different types of tools. So we have the secured vault to store all of your passwords in, and you can automatically fill in passwords in the login form, so you don't have to do that part. But you also want to use the auto generator tool because it allows you to make the passwords as strong as you possibly want, where you want to use passwords or passphrases, and it makes it so you don't have to worry about what the passwords are, where they are, or how to put them in, because it handles all of that for you. And you have access to this on multiple different types of devices, whether it's your web browser or your mobile apps or desktop applications, or even on the command line. Bitwarden also seals and encrypts your private data with end-to-end encryption before it ever leaves your devices, so you know you're the only person with access to your data, which is a very important piece for me. And another important piece is that they are focused on open source. That's right. Bitwarden is an open source project, and you can get started with it by going to bitwarden.com/DLN. And did I mention you can get started for free? Well, you can, but I also think you want to check out their premium account because you get so much cool stuff. You get 1 gigabyte of encrypted file storage, 2-step login with YubiKey, U2F Duo, Vault Health Reports, Bitwarden Authenticator for temporary one-time passwords, priority customer service, Bitwarden Send, which is a new feature that you can send files back and forth. It's fantastic. Check it out. You get all of this for less than $1 per month. That's right. Less than $1 per month gets you access to all of these great features. And they also have other things like the family accounts or the business accounts, so you can help people get started with a password manager if they've never used it before, which for me is a fantastic feature that I've helped my family get started with it, because there are so many great things about password managers, but they also can kind of be complicated if you've never tried them before. And that's why Bitwarden is so fantastic. So go to bitwarden.com/DLN to get started. And thanks again to Bitwarden for sponsoring Destination Linux.
You ready for me to go?
Nope.
I'm glad I didn't just run. I was going to.
Well, yeah, because I mean, I'm doing a lot of
the animations and
stuff. Yeah. But now we are ready. Yes, go.
So the news this week is quite disturbing in my mind. When I read this, I was just so upset, and I was instantly thinking of all the listeners that we have in Australia, which is one of the 3rd largest places that download this podcast. So we have lots of listeners there who care about their privacy, their security. And in this week, Tutanota released an article, was the first one that caught my attention, although lots of companies since have released their opinions and thoughts on this, in a bill that was rushed through the parliament that opens the door for surveillance at a scale that frankly should scare everyone. In my mind, I see these type of things and I think it's kind of like a testing ground. If they can get the people in Australia to deal with this, to put up with this, then other countries' leaders will go, hey, maybe we can pass a similar law and do the same thing too. This new bill allegedly allows the police to hack your device, collect or delete your data, and take over your social media accounts, like some dystopian future here that you would see in a sci-fi movie, without sufficient safeguards to prevent abuse of these new powers.
Without sufficient safeguards, just to clarify there, no safeguards. There's no judicial oversight on this. None.
Yeah.
It's
just so scary. It's a police state.
It really is. And this surveillance legislation amendment, Identify and Disrupt, Bill 2020, gives the Australian Federal Police, AFP, and the Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission 3 new powers for dealing with online crime. Data disruption warrant gives the police the ability to disrupt data by modifying, copying, adding, or deleting it. This is like Judge Dredd, the jury, the executioner, all in one here. Network activity warrant allows the police to collect intelligence from the devices or networks that are used or likely to be used by those subject to the warrant. Account takeover warrant allows the police to take control of an online account, social media, for the purpose of gathering information for an investigation. Of course, we know the key word here is suspect you of anything. So let's say you just happen to be a little deviant out there talking about privacy and open source, and they don't like it anymore, and they could suspect you of a crime. One of the scariest words I ever heard dealing with police was, it's officer discretion whether they take you to jail or not. Those type of things are just scary, and they should be scary to everyone there. They can make suspect you of any crime they want simply because they don't like you anymore. When presented with such warrant from the Administration Appeals Tribunal, Australian companies, system administrators must comply and actively help the police to modify, add, copy, or delete the data of a person under investigation. Refusing to comply could have one end up in jail for up to 10 years in jail if you don't comply with one of their requests for takeover. This, if nothing else, shows how much surveillance is power, why your privacy is so important. They want power over the people, and I hope all of our listeners in Australia and really everyone around the world gets involved to talk about how unbelievably dangerous this law here is.
Yeah, and the fact that even it says that you can modify, copy, add, and delete things, that means you could basically create false information. You could plant data and claim that this person is suspecting, oh, no, we've proven that you have this because we changed it so that you do. Like, that sort of stuff is just, like, insane, really.
The thing that shocked me most about this, it's not necessarily shocking that places pass very sweeping legislation that encompasses a broad range of powers that, of course, never going to be abused by the fine people that will enforce them. But the thing that was weird to me is no judicial oversight. There's no, it isn't we go to a court and say, here's why we think this person has done this, and so this is what we want in return. It's just, we get to do it. And like Michael said, hey, we found criminal stuff on your phone. Well, that wasn't on my phone. Oh yeah, it was on your phone.
There's a specific tool, Noah, that is out there in the wild that allows a backdoor into iPhones and Android devices. It's created from an Israeli company. It's been out for a long time, but the public's really starting to learn about it as it's come out in other podcasts and other sources of news and things about this particular tool that's being used. One of the interesting things about the people who are investigating is the tool was supposed to be used just for government to stop terrorism and those type of things. And the company behind it talks very openly about the fact that they believe they've helped stop terrorism because of having this tool that allows backdoors into these devices and things. But what they also found in the investigation is that the tool was being used by certain governments in a corporate warfare manner. For instance, there was a particular case of somebody doing science behind sugary drinks and the impact it has on health. And there was people who were within that company that had this tool now hacked into their device that was supposed to be just for government to learn about the activism of the people who are trying to talk about the dangers of sugary drinks and things for corporations. So your point there, what you're talking about is you can say that the purpose of this bill is to save the children or save terrorism, but what actually happens with these tools, no matter what they claim to be the purpose, is that they get abused and they get used for purposes that they were never meant to be used for. And I've yet to see a single example where that's not the case. Every single time it gets used and abused when you give this type of power away. And every single time people are willing to give away their rights and freedoms when their heartstrings are pulled on, because what they'll say in the Australian government is, but you don't want to stop terrorism. You don't want to protect the children. And that's what they'll use to pull on the heartstrings of the public.
You know, and
yeah, imagine BitTorrent. Imagine downloading Ubuntu on BitTorrent. You remember that whole fiasco, being sent to jail for 10 years for that?
Yep.
It's just so scary, you know, and having like Noah and Michael and Ryan have all been saying no judicial oversight is scary. You know, that's close to me to fascism, honestly.
Yep.
It's scary. Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, the idea that, you mentioned the whole Ubuntu torrent thing. I mean, they could just say you torrented whatever they wanted to say.
That's right.
Because they basically said that they could do whatever they want with this with no oversight. And they pushed it in with, what was it, 24 hours? Like, that is,
that's what you do it's what you do when you're passing a bill that is truly for the people, right?
Yeah, you pass it as quickly as possible underneath the shadow of the night. Yeah, that's what you do. Totally. Yeah.
Don't let anybody know that you're even trying. That's
Listen,
how that's true transparency.
Hat wearing Linux people don't understand. Police have never been known to plant false evidence and things like that. Michael, you're ridiculous. Come on.
Right.
And here's the thing: I'd be the first to say I do believe I honest to God believe that most people go into law enforcement because they want to make the society they live in better, right? Absolutely. Because they want to help people and because they want to do good things. The problem isn't with 99% of law enforcement.
Exactly.
The problem is with the 1% of human corruptibility when push comes to shove, and it's, I know this guy is guilty, I just can't prove it. Man, if I just drop these files on there, then the guy who I know is guilty goes to jail, right? And that's where it becomes problematic.
And also, just real quick, you ever heard of the phrase "a few bad apples"? It's used to dismiss something, saying it's not that big a deal, it's just a few. But the actual phrase, they always stop at that point and they don't continue the full phrase. The full phrase says "a few bad apples spoils the whole bunch," or the whole orchard. Like, that's the point of the phrase, not to just dismiss a few or not a big deal. It's to say that just a few can ruin it all. That's the whole point of the phrase. So this is a law that it seems like it's basically saying they can spoil as much as they want.
Do whatever they want. This is scary. And I really need people out there who care about their privacy and security and this stuff, get involved in with your local lawmakers and look at these laws that are coming through, because this could happen anywhere. This could happen in the US tomorrow. It could happen. People were talking about in the Patron chat about New Zealand potentially, would follow this. Like, these laws can start spreading like wildfire. We need to be loud about how angry we are about this type of thing happening there in brotherhood with all of our friends in Australia.
I tell you what, I'll leave us on a good note though. The good news is that in a post-Snowden world, software manufacturers and people have become hip to this stuff, right? And so we were kind of anticipating this long before the shoe dropped. So the good news is you have places like Matrix and software like Element and things like Tor and tools like Tails that enable you to retain your privacy basically regardless of what the laws are, right? And so when you come across an unjust law and you say to yourself, you know what? I don't want you to go ahead and monitor my traffic. You go ahead and monitor my traffic. all my traffic, all you're going to see is a bunch of hashes, and it's all encrypted, and then it goes from one place to the other, because you know what? You don't get to tell me that you get to take over my privacy. So go ahead and monitor my traffic. You want to try and change the content of the message I'm sending? Well, good luck spoofing my signature, because that's what you're going to need to do in order to send a message in a cryptographically secure software like Signal or Element or any of the multitude of choices that you have out there. So the technology, as bad as this law is, and as horrific as this is, and what it says about privacy, and honestly what it foreshadows is coming to privacy of the rest of the world, I would say that at least we have the good fortune of, we have 5 years of source code and tools that are on our side that were specifically built just in case this ever happened.
They kind of thought about that, though, Noah. I love that
Noah.
point. But they kind of thought about that because Australia also introduced a bill, I believe it was last year, that makes utilizing encryption services illegal to some point. And so there was news last year about them doing that. And I think it only at this time impacts products that are made there in Australia. Like they can't enforce it across other services. But think about how easy it would be for them to change the law then, because they can pass it under night in 24 hours to say any tool that's in Australia now is illegal if it has any encryption. So yes, you're right. Thankfully we do have safety today, but don't underestimate a government that's bold enough to pass something like this won't go the next step to take that away too.
Totally. I think where we're going to get to, though, is like that is a really dicey thing to actually enforce, right? Because you can't outright ban encryption or banking breaks. So you have to give people some encryption, but it has to be backdoorable encryption. And so then how do you know which tools the Australian government has? And then if they have to come out and be public about that, here's the tools you can use because we can look in on you. It's a PR disaster. And so I think that will be a even tougher nut to crack than this last one. But I see your point. When they get the final rule, it is hard to say what can you really do? I mean, you're risking jail time if nothing else, right?
Yeah, 10 years of it, like you committed a murder almost. Now, Jill, talk something happy. Football.
Okay. I was like, I have to
try following that one, Jill.
Sports ball.
to spread sadness out. I'm sorry. It took me
She's trying to expel the sadness.
Yeah.
Expel the sadness.
So the fun game we're going to cover today is called Access Football. Yeah, I know. All of us in the Linux community, most of us don't play sport ball. We're all nerds.
What are you talking about? I love some old pigskin. When Michael came over, we played pigskin every single day.
We hit to the gridiron instantly the second I got there.
Yeah.
Baseballs are made out of pigskin now?
I don't know.
So since we have a worldwide audience, it's important to clarify that we're talking about proper American football, not the kicking the ball around the field type, otherwise known as American soccer.
Boo. No, I'm kidding. I like soccer.
Yeah, the one that makes the most sense being called football. Right. Not that one.
Shut it, Michael. American football. You're a big
I mean, to be fair, just to be clear, for those who don't know, the English named both soccer and football, so it's not our fault.
It's Zeb's fault.
It's Zeb's fault. There we go.
I don't think him directly.
So Access Football is a simulation style football game featuring a franchise mode, massive customization, and realistic gameplay. And the game has a native Linux support and currently quite a few positive reviews. So if you're looking to play a sports game on Linux, then check out Access Football. I think it'd be actually a lot of fun. And it's the proper type of football. Known as U.S. pigskin.
Jeez,
football.
Jill, why are you so against European football, Jill? It's not like I wrote this.
Actually, I love watching rugby, Australian rules rugby, and English rules as well. So this game has lots of customization than most RPGs usually have. And I think it would actually be a really fun game to play.
Yeah, if you're into like Madden and all of that type of stuff, if you're into football
and the ESPN
and sports
games.
First, let me say nerd, because you said it to us all the time when we were in the software. So if you're in a sport, anyways, the point is that if you're into football and sports and stuff, it's $29 on Steam. So there you go.
Yeah, and also it's a simulation style game, but it's not a simulator. It's not like one of those, you're still playing the game similar to like Madden and that kind of thing. But you also have like dynasty modes and that sort of stuff too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's really, I actually do play some sport ball, yes, and I do like playing some virtual baseball games. Those are fun. So this would be fun, and honestly, it's actually a far more cooler and more sophisticated than the Mattel electronic football handheld game I spent many hours playing back in the 70s.
Yeah. Well, let's be honest. If anyone here is going to be playing a sport outside of Jill, it's going to be on a computer. So
yeah,
I mean, I play basketball.
I've been doing my finger push-ups every morning.
I play beach volleyball. So
I used to play basketball. It's been a while, but I used to. Although it's funny because you were talking about how it's more sophisticated than the Mattel electronic football game, and it made me think about like I wonder how much more sophisticated is it from Tecmo Bowl. So I remember playing that for hours as a kid.
Yes,
so good.
I remember that one. Yeah.
Anyway, if you want to check it out, it is Access Football 2021 on Steam. And by the way, there's been multiple different versions of it, and they do it by year, just like Madden does. So that's why it's Access Football 2021. So let's talk now to the software spotlight. We have something that a lot of people might already know about, but if you don't, you will get a lot of benefit from it. And you also might have seen it in a lot of places just in screenshots, because it is very often featured inside of screenshots when people are showing off their desktop and showing what operating system they use, and that is NeoFetch. NeoFetch, there are many different ways to get information about your hardware in Linux, but NeoFetch is one of those things that you just run in the command line, and then it shows up a ton of information. Like it'll show information about your operating system, the software, like the hardware you have, also different types of software like your DE and that sort of thing. And it also shows it in a very nice, aesthetically pleasing approach inside of the terminal, including a logo of the distribution that you're using. Now, it might not be able to detect sometimes, depending on your configuration, but you can also specify like which distro you want if you want to have that specific logo to be made inside of the screenshot. But NeoFetch has support for dozens of different distributions to create an ASCII version of the logo and that stuff to just show you all the information. So if you are wanting to share your demo of showing like your desktop and all the configurations you have, and you also want to make it easy to list out all of the configurations, and this is a great way to do that. And also apparently it has support for Mac OS.
Just did the Mac OS one, and it does indeed. Like I'm in Garuda Linux, but if I do the switch, the -- ASCII _distro space Mac OS, it shows an Apple logo there. So that's pretty funny. But it's still under OS says Garuda Linux. So
but if you type just NeoFetch by itself, it'll give you the system related stuff and the logo that you typically you're supposed to have, not the Mac one.
Right.
And also, if you're new in the Linux community, you will see all over YouTube, this is how people show their systems.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. YouTube, Reddit, Twitter. It's very common that you'll see inside. You'll see a screenshot of the desktop environment and everything, but then you also see a terminal just sitting right on top with NeoFetch right in there. And if you've ever seen that and didn't know what it was, now you do.
That's how I flex my hardware.
Yes.
Our tip of the week this week is using cron tab to automate your scheduling. So one of the things I love about any tool, if it's built into every distribution you come across, those are the tools you really want to master and you really want to own, because they'll save you no matter what you're doing. And even if the distribution really wasn't designed, even the application wasn't designed for doing the thing that you want to do, you can kind of shoehorn your way into it if you know your way around some of these very basic tools. Cron tab is absolutely one of those tools. And so we were working on a POS system, had to automate some stuff and didn't have a way to do that, and said, we just use cron tab. So if you've not used cron tab, it is the built-in scheduler to Linux. It comes with virtually every distribution out there, and it allows you to schedule events as often as you need. And so essentially, the first part is to write the script that you want to execute. And so that can be a collection of commands that you need to execute and be a single command that you need to execute. A common one might be an rsync command that you create a archive tar of your data backups, and you can do that every night and then have a NAS pick it off of the rsync it off of that machine and store it somewhere else and replicate it all over the place and make sure that you have a good backup. That might be a great place to get started with it. And so it's fantastic for doing backup routines, night times, that kind of stuff, monthly backups, nighttime backups. So to get started, you'll use crontab -e, and that's going to drop you into essentially a text document of the cron tab that you'll be able to set things up. And it's going to ask you for a couple of pieces of information. And so essentially you're going to put we work from the inside out. So you're going to start with the minutes, then you're going to put the hours, and you're going to put the days. And this is scheduling how often do you want it to run. So for example, if you just put asterisks all the way across the board, you would get every minute of every hour of every day of every month. And obviously that would get excessive, right? So maybe you want to just do it on 00 of the 12th hour of every month of every day. And so then, the first two you would fill out. The problem is, and they give you a little guide when you open up crontab the first time, the problem is can get kind of confusing. Just talking about it, I'm getting confused. And I do it, I'm confused myself. So I have a tool for you that you might want to check out. It's crontab-generator.org. And what it does is it's a website. So it's a cloud-based utility, I guess. But it's a website where you can actually use radio buttons to check, hey, I want this backup to only kick off on every minute, but only on midnight. And maybe I change that. Maybe I want it to be at a specific minute. I want it to be on at midnight right on the dot of every day of every month. Of every week, and it will spit out then the cron tab that you need to paste into your file, and it'll tell you, hey, this is what the asterisks and what the numbers would be, and then below that it actually gives you the opportunity to enter the command to execute. So this is where you put your script file, right? So if you're like me and you put them in opt/scripts, you'd put opt/script/backup or nightly backup.sh. And then you can click generate cron tab file, and it'll give you the 00**/opt/scripts.backup.sh. And then you'll notice it'll even append the little forward caret and then /dev/null, which is actually going to throw out the log. And so I'll let you know that you might want to actually specify a file there. You might want to put /home/ or /root/ cronlog.txt. And that way, in case your cron tab fails, if something goes wrong or something goes right and you just want to verify, you can log back in and cat that file out and see what your cron tab is doing. And so I use that all the time for backups. Log in, take a look at that log file, make sure the backups, yep, they did indeed go the night before. So it's crontab-generator.org. Of course, we'll have links for you in the show notes, as well as an outline, because like I say, when just hearing that probably doesn't make a lot of sense. Once you actually type crontab-e and you look at how it's set up on your system, it'll make a whole lot more sense. So start automating your things with crontab.
I love your face for this tip and trick of the week, Noah, because I was one of those people that would look at people's examples in the tutorial and try to decipher what to put in there for the time and the month and the date that I wanted for it. And because I don't use it enough, I use it like at my home and things, but enough to memorize all that stuff. And this cron tab generator, dude, thank you for this. It's going to save so much time.
I know that with the amount of filling of people's brains you do, you don't got a lot of spare room. So anytime we can offload something to a cloud service, we got to do that.
I love you for it. And a big thank you to each and every one of you for supporting us by watching or listening to Destination Linux. However you do it, we love your faces as well. And if you want more DL, you can become a patron, like all of the amazing people behind the scenes in the gigantic virtual stadium that has virtual drinks and virtual food and virtual conversations going on all the time. You also get unedited versions of the show, VIP access to events and live recordings, Destination Linux every Sunday. Come hang out with the crew.
In addition, every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern, we're now live at DLNlive.com. Now, the best part, everyone is invited to watch the recording of Destination Linux each and every week. We can't wait to see you in the chat.
And also go right now to the DLN store at DLNstore.com, where you can pick up some swag. We have t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, stickers, backpacks, aprons, so much stuff. And you can customize it just like how Jill did with the pink mug. There's so much cool stuff there. Go to DLNstore.com to check it out, so you can get all of the great like merch for like the Linux 91 hat that Ryan is sporting, the Linux is Everywhere shirt that Jill is sporting, and also so much more.
Yay! And make sure to check out all our wonderful shows here on the Destination Linux Network. We have the fabulous Pseudo Show, the amazing Ask Noah Show, the very informative This Week in Linux, the awesome DOS Geek Channel, the wonderful DLN Extend, and one of my favorite shows of all time, Hardware Addicts. And we have GameSphere, and get your Fedora hat on with our latest show, the Fedora Podcast. So go to destinationlinux.network and subscribe to all these wonderful shows to keep those penguins marching and the full Monty of Linux and open source awesome sauce. And enjoy.
You're muted.
I just realized that. Everybody have a great week, and remember that the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
Thanks, everyone.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Twirl while you grill.
Twirl while you grill.
I didn't say it. You're
For
welcome,
$24.99, you can twirl while you grill too. And if you call now, you'll get three.
Big echo? What?
Oh, wait, there's more. Call right now and we'll license it under the Microsoft public license.
I see. There was an echo in the outro because I was doing the echo in the outro was because I was doing some like animation stuff, and there was a double up of the audio.
Oh,
okay. Michael, how many times have we had to tell you stop animating while we're doing a show?
Yes. No more scenes, Michael. No more scenes.
Well, so here's
forbidden.
Here's the thing.
Tell me
Shut up. I'm gonna do what I want. So
whatever, Microsoft public licenser.
Mozilla.
Oh God. It has the same acronym.
You're the guy who got Mac OS when he searched for NeoFetch. He got Mac OS. I mean, how'd that happen?
Yeah.
That's the first one I wanted.
What are you running over there?
Yeah.
What are you running over there?
I'll never tell.
Yeah. So the echo is unfortunate, but that's the beauty of local audio recordings.
You know what's beautiful, Michael, is that we talked about licenses and nobody fell asleep, at least on the show.
Well, I mean, you did in the beginning when I started talking about licenses.
Well, yeah, because I didn't know where it was going, but then it became entertaining. So.
Okay, that is good.
Yeah.
Good.
All right, can we bring the patrons in? Hello, patrons. Hello, patrons.
Hello, patrons. Welcome in.
Hello.
Oh, yay, Noah.
It was me.
Wow, that crowd never cheered the whole time we were doing the show. We bring the patrons in and they cheer.
Oh boy.
There's a little feedback right there.
Somebody's echoing.
Hello. Hi.
Microsoft license is MS-PL. Okay. It's too close. They need to change it.
That's true.
Yes, because Microsoft's going to change their license. That'll go well.
Well, I mean, on the bright side, at least Mozilla got it out. They got theirs out first, so they were able to take the regular MPL. So a way,
let's read Microsoft's license. Never mind, it's long.
It's actually incredibly surprising.
Yeah.
The terms reproduce, reproduction, derivative works, and distribution have the same meaning here.
Was just proprietary. They're like, we don't need it. We don't need a license. It's
this
proprietary.
License does not grant you rights to use any contributor's name, logo, or trademarks. Fair. If you bring a patent claim,
aren't they trying to make a version of Windows with a Linux kernel in it?
No.
Not
at all.
Like on the whole thing, the instance is high.
I mean, they have WSL, but that's not at all the same thing. And
it will never happen.
The people that even say that it's possible, it's just kind of like it's a pipe dream. Let's just say that.
It is.
So if you distribute any portion of the software in source code form, you may do so only under this license by including a copy of the license If you distribute any portion of software in compiled or object code form, you may only do so under a license that complies with this license. So what licenses comply with this license? Who knows these things?
Hey,
Someone who works at Microsoft.
Yeah, I guess I'm not going to use the Microsoft one.
I mean, Bill
Michael,
Gates wasn't
not gonna use that one.
development dictator for nothing. So.
Oh no, we're gonna have to completely redo the show and say we can't use their Microsoft license.
Oh no, so sad.
Michael, I'm going to use the Mozilla public license. That's the one I think we should have recommended the whole time. So, in case you're wondering. So what's everyone been doing this week?
Well, I'm
today
celebrating.
We were discussing Destination License Network.
Yeah.
Wait, I heard a celebration. What's the celebration?
Yeah, I just completed another revolution around the sun. So.
Who's ready to hatch some cool pets?
Nice.
Click here to make your very
Happy Revolution Day. That's a weird way of saying it.
It is, yeah.
Did you know, speaking of licensing, did you know that the Happy Birthday song is copywritten? And if we were to perform it here, it could be considered a public performance and would be in a violation.
I think there was a court case a few years
There
ago. That
is
resolved
currently a court case, but it has not yet been settled. And because of that, it is still currently a copywritten song and cannot be used in public performance.
Well, we'll make our own version of it up. Happy Revolution around the sun. Happy
Revolution around the sun. Happy Revolution as you spin across the sun.
And thank goodness for Michael AI.
Happy Revolution to you
around the sun.
Can we copyright that version now?
I mean, we're gonna have to put a license on it, but yes.
Yeah, I don't think anybody will want to fork that one.
If you want it, then you got to put a license on it.
If you want it, then you gotta put a license on it.
Oh my god!
Shake your head.
Just so you know, Ryan, I made a note for the outtakes.
Oh, come on!
Uh-oh.
Oh, hey, we should stop
Well, we
recording.
know what the outtake's gonna be.
Oh yeah, let's stop
recording.
Save.
Export.
You just cracked yourself up over there, didn't you, Mike?
Waff.
No,
I'll put it in the Patron chat.
Call this part 2.
I'm calling mine B.
Yeah, I like.
Oh, you know what? This is the best part of my whole day. I get to watch the wormhole.
Yeah.
Gosh, I love this thing.
Same
Oh, this is amazing.
Did we ever cover it as a software spotlight?
I don't know. If we didn't, that was a huge mistake.
Not yet.
We were going to, and then
Michael
you
wanted to
replaced
test
it.
Wormhole.app.
You look like you're really choking there on water, Michael. Are you going to make it? Because this is going to look like a dumb gravestone died from choking on water.
I was choking on water.
Michael, do you need a
Refused
break?
bubbly all his life. Water was eventually what killed him.
Ryan, we can just make something up.
Michael's still recovering.
That's much
He's
cooler.
very ill. So.
Yeah. Can't have one of my
I'm
friends die
flying!
from water.
I'm
choke.
flying! Sorry, I was going through my wormhole. It's quite exciting.
Linear part 2. Boom.
Now, did you do it as a WAV?
I did do a WAV.
Okay.
You know, it's called a wormhole is that you can put up 2 files at the same time.
So no, fact check.
Did you release it under the correct license?
Oh, that's a good point.
There is one license that's kind of funny, but it's you can fill in the blanks, but it's a WTF license.
Who was fact checking me?
Yeah, so fact check apparently Warner Chappelle settled for $14 million and declared that that the Happy Birthday song is public domain.
It is. It's settled now.
Yeah, as of 2016.
Finally.
Oh, great! That's fantastic. Whose birthday is it? Joel's?
Yep.
Happy birthday to you. This song is no longer copywritten. It's not copywritten. Happy birthday, dear Joel.
Yeah.
Happy birthday to you.
To you. No
Oh, glad it's not
royalties.
getting wrecked.
We should really charge for that. That's so
That was
good.
way better. No,
should
we can now without having to pay a license fee. Isn't that
I mean,
fantastic?
isn't this what the Patron membership is
It's a
for
patron
anyway?
perk. You get us singing birthday.
I mean, I guess that's fair.
Well, hey, Ryan, why are the patrons canceling their memberships?
It droves.
Yeah, let me join the Patreon right now.
Ryan, if I'm sorry, Noah, if the the whole IT career thing doesn't work out for you, you have a voice that could sing the very birds off the trees.
Yeah, I don't think so.
We do.
Is that a compliment?
Yes.
Yes. Fern removal.
Yeah.
Sing the
That was not a
birds out of the
backhanded
trees
compliment.
as they fall to their
It
death.
kind of sounded like it might have been.
Yeah, it's called phone removal. It's a very hireable thing.
I mean, as a band, I feel like we didn't even practice this. And
we have a band now?
meshing
So well.
Yeah,
Hold
we
on.
meshed really well.
We're a band now?
Totally. We're the
Sweet.
Ryan and the open sources freezing Michael.
There we
Ryan
go.
and open source.
Right in the open sourcers. Oh, so in all seriousness, hey Michael, you play guitar, right?
No.
What?
Guitar
I thought you
Hero.
played guitar.
Guitar
Guitar Hero.
Ryan,
I don't
you
play any
bass?
instrument. No.
You don't. Well, any idiot can play bass. So Ryan's going to be on bass.
Yes.
And
Hey.
Michael
Okay,
will play
so
guitar.
I'm really good at Guitar Hero, so I know that correlates completely, and then I
Yeah.
could totally just transition to guitar for sure.
Okay, all right. So we'll have Ryan on lead vocals and bass, and Michael, you can play guitar, and I'll play drums, and we'll have Ryan in the open sourcers.
We just have Michael play the triangle because he looks like a triangle.
Or
If I'm gonna have the
harmonica.
triangle, I'm also gonna have the
Cowbell?
the
Or the
shaky
gong.
thing. What's the shaky thing?
Yeah.
A kabasa? Kabasa?
No, it's the not
Oh,
the
no, the boss. Yeah,
not the
boss.
mariachi shaky thing, but the one that's like a circle that has got stuff all around it.
Oh yeah, yeah, it does.
Will
Yeah.
all of our music be GPL version 2?
No, because that's not for creative
Copy
right
left. You have to
works.
copy our music left.
No,
prefers
GPL is specifically for software. So if you used it for any kind of media, it would not. It would fall apart very quickly. That's why
Yeah.
Creative Commons exists.
Ah, Creative
Which I love
Commons.
Creative Commons.
Because the GPL was specifically made for software. But Creative Commons
If you make
also
music
has,
and not software.
Yeah.
yeah. Also, the Creative Commons has multiple different versions of it.
They
And
do.
also, yeah, there's multiple different versions in terms of numbers, but also different versions based on the qualifications you put on it. So
Right.
no commercial, no derivative.
Not
that sort of stuff.
attribution.
So this is what I was going to say. If you, I wasn't sure if we wanted to go into this in the show or not, but so I license all my stuff as CC by ND, and the reason behind that is it lets you take the content, do whatever you want. You can sell it, you can make money, you can use it in your works, perfectly fine. The only thing you're not allowed to do is A, take me out of context, or B, not give credit where credit is due. And past that,
That's
you can do what you
awesome.
want. Yeah.
I like it.
Well, also there's another. Technically, if you use it inside of something else, that also is a derivative.
Also, isn't there like a thing where like if you update the design of something, you extend its copyright further, like in the terms of like specific characters, like what Disney has?
Thank you, Disney.
No.
Yeah.
No.
No, he's right. That's how
That
they.
is
That's
the
how they
Disney
get. That's,
license, and that's a
That
totally
whole
different
update.
shit.
That whole updating the design doesn't really change the essence of it. That is a loophole that is basically for Disney itself, for
right.
Mickey Mouse.
But you can see their point though, right?
Mickey
If
Mouse.
if they continue to make Mickey Mouse relevant by changing and updating things, then you can see the reason. I'm not saying I agree with it, but you can see the reason of like, okay, this isn't a 100-year-old character, it's like a 20-year-old character, 30-year-old character, because every few years.
No,
we-
the design
Really?
is this 20-year-old, sure. The character is not. The character goes back to its first creation. So at the very least, the first versions should be public domain.
Okay, fine, you're right. It must be a public domain, so therefore I can call you Mickey.
I mean, you can call me Mickey. I'm not
Mickey's
going to
a dick.
respond to you, but you can say it.
Well,
what if we
You
all
have,
only
we could
call
call
you?
you
Mickey
have the
Mantle.
freedom to say whatever you want. That's fine, and I have the freedom to kick you off the show
You could-
right now.
you could call me Minnie.
I can just uncheck the box on the OBS, and no one will know what you said.
Hey, Michael, what's it like working for the Australian government?
Hold on a second. Let me uncheck Ryan's box too.
Asks the NSA.
I mean, any government ever, but sure.
Yeah, and you all thought we were bad at the NSA. I mean, we're not so bad now, are we?
Wait, Ryan, you were from the
That is totally a non-argument. Just because one government is terrible does not negate the other governments being terrible.
Reasons to be anarchist.
No, that's.
I mean, I am. So
no, I don't know. There's benefits to governments.
That's
There's lots of bad.
You know what I think, though, Michael? I think we should take this conversation off the air.
We are at
get the exclusive. Yeah,
what, 2 hours
exclusives
now? Almost. Yeah.
Take it off.
We are good to go. We are good to go. So that is a good place to end the conversation, and we will see you all next week for another episode of Destination Linux Live at dealinglive.com. And we will, if you want to join us in the Patron post show, you can do so by going to Patreon or sponsors and signing up and becoming a patron, and you'll see a link that is pinned there. And thank you for that outro music. That is perfect. So I'm going to end the stream.
That is cool.
It is so perfect. So I'm going to end the stream right now, thanks to that perfectly timed outro music. So see y'all next week.
We love you, everyone.
So many advantages to having an audio engineer on staff.
Yes.